So, over the past 3 decades or so, there has been a running battle between me and a sort of orthodoxy in Islamic economics. The orthodoxy holds that we should take Western economics as the basis and then modify it appropriately to create Islamic economics. And that lots of knowledge has been generated by the West, and we should not throw it away. This is un-Islamic. We should take whatever is good from it and reject what is wrong and adjust it. It seems like a very sensible idea. As opposed to this, I have been saying that no, we should reject it completely and rebuild economics from the start. So, this doesn't seem like a reasonable idea because, after all, ilm is ilm, and the companions of the Prophet and the Islamic civilization has benefited from knowledge from India, China. It's undeniable that a lot of, for Greek philosophy, a lot of different civilizations, we borrowed and accepted knowledge. So why not accept Western knowledge about economics? So basically, the thing is that economics is not knowledge, it is actually the religion of the West. It's actually, modern economics is the religion of capitalism. It is and it's very deceptive because it claims to be a positive science, claims to describe reality. But in fact, it is not positive, it is normative. So, as I'm sure you know, if you're economists, that economics began as a branch of moral philosophy. Adam Smith was a moral philosopher. So economics is always about the what should be. It is never about what is. So when economists describe that human behavior is selfish, this is not a description, it is a prescription. And we know that because when we study behavior, we find that students who are trained in economics are more selfish than the students who are not trained in economics. Because students in economics are trained to be selfish because they're taught that selfish behavior is rational. So the question is, so basically that's the background for this talk. So the question is, how can we rebuild economics so that it becomes a moral science? See, if you study modern economics and you study Islam and Islamic economics, you don't find any overlap. Islam is talking about kinds of things. If you look at all of the books of hadith and the entire intellectual tradition of Islam, for 1,000 years, we look at Ghazali, Tamiya, whoever you want, you will not find anything which has any relation to what is written in the modern economics textbook. If you look at Samuelson, you just won't find anything that is common. So this is very surprising that Islam for 1,000 years has nothing to say about economics. It's very strange, but that is the conclusion you come to if you study Samuelson's or Manikiv or whatever. If you say, okay, here's what Manikiv has written, what would our elders in our intellectual tradition say about this? So if you think about that question, you find that there is nothing, because what they are writing has no relation. At least it doesn't seem like that. There's no relationship between what Manikiv is saying and what our entire intellectual tradition says. So to overcome this gap, you have to dig underneath that. There's lots of things which are being said, but there's also a huge foundation which has not been mentioned. Actually, a lot of things are taken for granted. and they are buried in the foundations. So what economics is different from what it claims to be. All right, let's just get into the first. So there is a big problem with modern economics, and the biggest problem, easiest way to see that is to say that economics is thought to be about universal laws, whereas economics should be historical and contextual. So the economics of Turkey in 2026 is very different from the economics of Turkey in 1999, and also very different from economics of Pakistan, and also very different from economics of Europe and of South America. So every place exists within some uh, time and within some culture and within some context, and the economics will vary according to that context. Now, this is systematically denied by modern economics. In modern economics, you say that when you study trade theory, you will start with equations which are supposed to apply across time and space to every country. So there is no textbook which teaches the economics of trade between India and Pakistan, or the economics of trade between Turkey and European Union. There's only one set of laws, and they apply to all situations across time and space, just like the laws of physics. So this is a fundamental epistemological error that was made by the West for reasons which I have discussed elsewhere. But in the West, they came to believe that knowledge is only universal truths, that local, contextual, basically they came to believe that science is the only knowledge. There is no knowledge outside of science. And that was the stance of logical positivism. Logical positivism has been rejected. In the 1970s, it was abandoned by the philosophers as a wrong philosophy. But logical positivism became the foundation of the institutional setup. The educational institutions were all built in the early 20th century on positivist foundation. So even though it has been rejected as a philosophy, it continues to dominate thinking and it is training and intellectual output. So having made this mistake that science is the only knowledge, then science is a study of eternal laws, universal laws, like the law of gravity. It holds in time space across. It's the same in Britain and it's the same in Turkey. But economics is not like that. So the fact is that all knowledge is produced within a historical context and in response to the needs of that context. There is no abstract philosophy. Even if you look at philosophy or medicine, everything is produced within a particular context and it responds to the needs of that time. So taking the knowledge outside of that context is like taking the answer to a question and getting rid of the question. So for example, to make it more concrete, Keynesian economics was developed in response to massive unemployment that was produced by the Great Depression in 1929. So Keynes was very clearly and explicitly and specifically trying to solve the problem of how we have this 16%, 20% unemployment in England. How can we solve this problem? That is what was his concern, and he found a solution to that. Now, to take Keynesian theory and ask, does Keynesian theory work for Turkey? Is a silly question because it was not designed for that. So, but this is how the textbooks that you study in economics treat it. They treat Keynesian theory as a set of ideas which is somehow universally applicable to all economies at all places in all times. So this is not a problem for us. Actually, this is the golden opportunity for us, because when the existing body of knowledge is very bad, then very simple innovations can produce major improvements. And so this is the golden opportunity. If we think of Islamic economics as a replacement for economics, not as a supplement to modern economics, we can make huge advances. We can achieve much deeper understanding of the problems, and we can find solutions which the economists cannot. Even today, the economists don't have an understanding of why the global financial crisis occurred and what could have been done to prevent it and how to prevent it in the future. Nobody knows, because the theories that they have are not capable of dealing with this issue. So one of the great things about this approach, when we think about replacement, is that there is an attitude that, we have to, it will take us 50 years to develop Islamic economics, because first we have to absorb and assimilate and master the economics that has been produced over the past 3 centuries, and then we will be able to add to it. But here I'm saying that you can just throw it all in the garbage and start from zero, so you can get to the start line much faster. So now we have this major principle that all economics, not just economics, all knowledge is historical and contextual. So economics itself started as scholastic economics. Basically, scholastic refers to the schoolmen, to church scholars. So in Europe, scholastic economics was developed as a branch of the teachings of the Bible. How does the Bible, what does the Bible have to teach us about economic life? Just like Islamic economics. And so it was concerned with justice. One of the critical ideas is that property or wealth which is given to you is not your personal property. It is an amana. And you have to use it correctly and wisely for social welfare. You cannot take your property and burn it, because that's wasteful. It doesn't belong to you. But as opposed to this, in the West, after the scholastic theory was rejected, then it was said that a man's home is his castle, that he is complete master of what he owns. So this is a different theory of property that emerged. So what happened was that there were theories evolved due to historical challenges and changes. So what happened in Europe was that there were centuries of religious wars between Catholics and Protestants. And they were very deadly wars. They were devastating. Lots and lots of lives were destroyed, millions of people. It affected everybody on Europe. There was nobody who was not touched by these religious wars. So one thing that became clear to the thinkers in Europe, whether or not it's true, they said that, this religion, it causes continuous wars. It breaks up families, and we have Protestants and Catholics fighting each other in the mahallas and in the cities and in the nations. So we have to get rid of this. Can't have religion as the basis for society. And that led to the creation of, eventually, secular social science which is built on non-religious principles. The thinking was that because people have differences about religion, so they are fighting each other. So let's develop a science which everybody agrees upon, so there will be no fighting. So that was the idea of secular social science. Let's find principles not taken from religion, because if you take them from religion, then there will always be a fight, because what the Protestants have to say is different from what the Catholics have to say. So let's take principles which are agreed to by all rational people, And then we can build a peaceful society on this basis. So the first of the secular social sciences to develop was political science, because that was what was urgently needed. Again, this is a theory of knowledge. Knowledge develops according to the needs of the time. The needs of the time was a political theory which would allow for peace, and so the political science was developed. But they faced an immediate problem. If you are going to get rid of religion, how are you going to get good behavior by the people? And it was clear to everybody that good behavior is necessary. You can't build a society in which there are no rules. If I want to, I can murder you. And if you have the power, you can murder me. Society can't be built in such an environment. And that is what Hobbes, who was the first secular political scientist, said. He said that life would be brutal and nasty and short. Life is the war of all against all. Because if there is no morals, then this is how society has to be. And so, how are we going to manage that? So, his answer was this book called The Leviathan, which is supposed to be the first it is actually the first book of political science which doesn't mention religion. So it's political science without religion. So the solution that he finds to the problem is that you have to have a huge state. The king and the bureaucracy, they will look after the people. If anybody misbehaves, then we will punish him, and we will give rewards for good behavior. So basically, the state takes the place of God and takes place of religion and takes the place of morality. That was his solution. Now, once we started to, once in Europe, religion was abandoned, then the scholastic theory of economics was also abandoned. And so the replacement was political economy. In the scholastics, like in Islamic economics, justice is the primary concern. And interest was considered unjust because the person who has the money is both more powerful and more wealthy. And in Islam, as in Christianity, somebody who has more money is under obligation to provide it to those who have less, in the sense that the Quran has many sayings about how those who have should take care of those who don't have. So, if the person who has wealthy takes advantage of the person who is poor to give him money but to charge interest on it, this is exploitation. And that was the logic for prohibition of interest. But in a market economy where it is assumed that everyone will act selfishly, this logic does not make any sense. So the prohibition on interest was removed. And so basically, thinking of economics in terms of justice was abandoned. So one of the important questions of moral philosophy is that suppose that you have a person who is leaving the country and he has an expensive car, but he has to sell it in one day. And so the value of the car is $1,000, but you can take advantage of this and say that, okay, since you have to sell it tomorrow, I have the cash, I can give you $100. And maybe he will just take it because there's nothing he can do. Either he has to throw the car in the garbage or he takes the $100. So is this permissible? Now, in modern economics, it's perfectly fine. Any transaction which is done with mutual consent of both parties is fine. But both in Islamic economics and in Christian economics, this is not correct. You cannot take advantage of somebody's need. So this question of whether the price is a fair price, whether it's a just price, this is a part of the moral philosophy, but it is not part of modern economics. So when you talk about political economy, then the question is one of power. Do I have the power to do this? If so, then it's fine. So just like today, if you have the power to destroy a civilization, then there is no question of the right to do so or the justice in doing so. If you have the power, that automatically creates the right. So there's the law of the jungle, might makes right. If you have the power to do so, then automatically it is justified. So that is the current state of modern economics, also of political science, that there is no morality is not involved. So if we want to build an Islamic economics, then we have to replace this. We cannot take modern economics, which is built on considerations of power, and modify it to make it Islamic. We have to rebuild on moral foundations. So actually, even political economics was abandoned later. And that was because political economy also had institutions, it also had history, it also had context. But this was abandoned because in the two world wars, this was something that social science at that time did not anticipate. In fact, everybody was predicting, the social scientists of Europe, that Europe is now and the top trajectory and we are the most advanced civilization and we will continue in this way and we will continue advancing. So, and that we have achieved peace. That was their goal. And for about 100 years, there was peace in Europe. That was very unusual time because Europe, since the old times, they have always been fighting each other. So the 19th century was very unusual in Europe in that there was no fighting within Europe. There was lots of fighting around the globe, but not inside Europe between the European powers. So they thought that our social science has become successful and we have achieved peace forever. So when the World War I broke out, it was a big surprise and it was a very catastrophic for social science because the social science at that time, its prestige became zero, that people had been predicting peace and now we have a major war and not just one. World War II was quickly followed by World War II. And so the traditional approach to social science, which was historical, qualitative, institutional, and moral, this was abandoned. And at the same time, in World War I and World War II, the prestige of science became very high because there were many important technological developments, flying planes and atom bombs and many other technology. And basically, science was what won the world wars. So people said that, okay, this social science is useless, the traditional approach. So let's rebuild social science. So basically, in early 20th century, social science was rebuilt on the basis of logical positivist philosophy. And that is why today economics takes the shape of universal laws, mathematics, no history, no context, no realization that the problems of economics in Turkey are different from the economic problems of Pakistan, and they are different from the economics problems of the European Union, and again different from Russia and China. Every economy is different, and the economic analysis for that economy will be quite different from the economic analysis of another economy or at another point in time. Again, as time progresses, also things keep changing. So because of this, basically modern economics is blind to reality because reality is contextual, historical. So if you say, okay, in the modern Turkey, we have this much unemployment. These are our industries. Uh, these are the industries. Should we be developing a semiconductor industry or not? These are not questions that economics can answer, because according to the methodology that they have adopted, economics should be universal. So the fact that at this time, within this historical context, should we develop the semiconductor industry, or should we be developing space technology, or should we invest in artificial intelligence? These are questions which require understanding of what is happening now today, and data from 100 years ago will not be relevant to those decisions. But a universal law cannot look at these kind of things. So, we want to say that if we want to build Islamic economics as an alternative, as a replacement for modern economics, then we have to reintroduce morality. We have to reintroduce politics and power, which is removed from modern economics. There's no mention of politics, there's no mention of power. And one of the critical questions of political economy was that, is it true that capitalists have a lot of power, and do they use this power to exploit the laborers? This was what Marx said, and a lot of neoclassical economics is about rejecting this idea of Marx and saying that no, this is not true. Capitalists do not exploit laborers. So this question has been taken out. And then we need to introduce historical context, what's happening now, and the problems of now, and the answers to these problems, the solutions of now, are different from the problems of 50 years ago and 100 years ago. So this is a very large number of things that we have to do to rebuild Islamic economics. But there is a key, a secret, a formula that we can use, which can make it easy. And the secret is to look at money. Once you, the role of money in conventional modern economics is completely misunderstood. And because of this, everything else is also misunderstood. So if we reintroduce money, we can get back morality, we can get back justice, and we can get back politics and power. Everything that has been ignored can be brought in by a good analysis of money. This is not to say that this is the only thing, but only that it's a good place to start, because instead of looking at a very large number of different topics and in every area making innovations, we just look at one thing and we use that to introduce all of the other topics. There are many other things to do, but this is a very clean and simple approach to rebuilding Islamic economics. So we need to start by understanding what is a monetary production economy, because this is the economy that we live in, and this is the economy that doesn't exist in the economics textbook of today. So it's a very clean place to start, very simple, very easy to understand. Now, if you look at a modern textbook, it will teach you that money is neutral. What this means is that money only affects prices. It doesn't affect the real economy. So the real economy consists of factors of production, labor, capital, etc., etc. But money doesn't have a significant role to play. So this is monetary economics, Friedman's theory. Inflation is always and everywhere caused by money. What basically this is saying is that money and prices are linked, and that's the only linkage. The only change that money makes is to the prices. So there's the real business cycles macro school, and there are 7 major schools of macroeconomic thought. In all of them, money is neutral. Now, one of the central claims of Keynesian economics was that money is not neutral. So that's the critical thing, that if we start from money and we say that money is not neutral, what does this mean? It means that money has real effects. In fact, money is the most important economic factor. According to modern economics, money doesn't matter. But in reality, money is the most important factor in a capitalist economics. So Keynesian theory starts by analyzing the role of money, but Keynes himself was misunderstood or neutralized. So Samuelson Hicks' interpretation of Keynes basically neutralized the role of money. And it said that money is, very roughly speaking, you can say that they said that money is non-neutral in the short run, but in the long run it is neutral. So there is only a short-run impact. And this is, again, different from Keynes. So if we do a serious analysis of money, we can reintroduce history, context, power, and justice. So what is money? That's the first question. So money is a social claim which is recognized by all. So consensus, social consensus is very important, that everybody recognizes that $1 has value. It is agreed upon by all people. So then the question is, how does one create this social consensus? How does one get everybody to agree to using money for all transactions in the economy, all commercial transactions? So there are many ways to create this consensus. All of them involve some institutional support and some backing by governments. Now, crypto seems to be an exception to this because it's run on a peer-to-peer basis by individuals. But there is, if this is prohibited by the government, it can make it very hard to use. So in some sense, government permission is required. But also Islamically, there is a strong case that the only valid issuer of money is the government. And so one could make an Islamic case that the government has the sole right to issue money. And so even if crypto is used, it should be authorized and legitimized by the government. So there is a common misconception that gold is the real money. Now, the fact is that gold raw has never been used in money elsewhere, anywhere in the world in history. What has been used as money very commonly is minted gold. When you mint gold, then the mint certifies that this is a certain standard quantity of gold. Now, the fact is that the actual quantity of the gold inside that coin is not important. It is the certification of the mint which is important. And the proof is that in most eras of the past, when gold was in use, there were often different qualities of coinage available. So some of the coins would have less gold, some would have more gold, but they all counted as equivalent. Because one doesn't have time on every transaction to check how much gold there is and what is the gold content of this coin. So it's the certification that created the value. So once we understand that governments are involved very importantly in certifying that this coin has the value, and it is the government certification of that coin which creates the value. It's not the gold content. In all eras, gold contents of the coins varied, but the coins were uh, considered as equivalent in the market for trade. So, social consensus is created by government backing and support, and this includes some legislative framework, some judicial framework to enforce money-based contracts. Then we need to make sure that the government produces money in the right quantities. So if the government produces too much money, this can lead to inflation. And if the government produces too little money, this can lead to unemployment or recession. So whoever is producing money needs to produce it in the right quantity. And that's what I mean by responsible production. So the critical question is that, so that means that money is a public good. It is something which everybody uses. It serves public welfare, and misusing it can cause harm to everybody. So one Islamic consequence of it, since this is a public good, it should be used for public welfare only, and it cannot be privatized. And today, this is the biggest economic problem of the modern world, that the production of money, which is a public good, has been privatized. So, what is a monetary production economy? It's the economy that we live in. Especially if you think of a farm, of agricultural production, then the farmer has to buy the seeds, the fertilizer, hire the laborers, run his tractors, and so on. All of the production cost is incurred first, and then later production takes place, and then you sell the product, and then you get money. So money is very critically involved, because if you don't have money, you can't start the production process. So basically, either you have your money or you borrow money for to pay the costs, and then you earn money later. So this is what means that if you don't have enough money, then the production can't get started, and so you will have a recession. You won't be able to produce, even if the land is there and the labor is there and the seeds are there. If the farmer doesn't have money, he can't start production, and there will be no crop, and there will be huge recession in the economy. So basically, the government in modern economy has the responsibility to increase the money supply sufficiently to allow for production to take place, but not so much that inflation takes place. And that's what responsible creation of money means. And basically, what this means is that money must be created at roughly the same pace as the economic growth. What this means is that money must be continuously being created. So the critical question in a monetary economy is, how do we ensure responsible creation of money? This is a question which doesn't get mentioned in the economics textbooks, because they say that money is neutral. It doesn't matter how much money there is. If there is more money, the prices will be high, and if there is less, the prices will be low. But otherwise, money doesn't matter. So the real business cycle model, which is one of the main macro models, has no role for money at all. And this is very different from what I'm saying here. So the critical questions for a monetary economy are: who creates money? What is the process used for the creation of money? How is this newly created money used? And who benefits from this, whether it's the public or it's the powerful? So we get to the answers to these questions. How is money created? what the theory says about this is very different from the reality. So what the textbooks tell you is that there is government creates high-powered money, and then there is a money multiplier. And so the total amount of money is just the money multiplier times the high-powered money. This is completely false, a bogus story. But what this story says is that the money is created by the government and is under the control of the government. Both of these are false. There is a paper in 2014 published in Bank of England which says that these are false explicitly. These stories which are taught in textbooks are false. Private banks create money when they make loans. So the private banks, basically what happens is that suppose that somebody comes, I'm a bank, and somebody comes and asks me for a loan of $1 million. What I do is I open an account in his name and I write, this man has $1 million of credit in my bank. That's it. So $1 million of money comes into existence by a pen stroke. The standard story which you are told in textbooks is that the bank has money which belongs to other depositors, and it takes that money and it gives it to this man. This is false. That's called the financial intermediation story, that the bank takes money from some depositors and it gives it to the lenders. This is wrong. So because private banks can create money, so the government does not have control over money, and there is no money multiplier. And how much money the banks create and for what purpose it is created, it has massive impacts on the economy. But even though this is now well known after the Bank of England paper, nobody can deny it. Textbooks continue to teach this false story. This is very surprising. Even authors of textbooks, we can identify this person. He has written this textbook. In this textbook, he's telling us the story that there's high-powered money and there's money multiplier. And in his own research articles, he has shown that this is wrong. So there's something very strange going on. Why is the public being fed a falsehood, a myth, a fable about money, which even the author knows is wrong? This is because of the politics of money. The money is linked to power. Today, the financial institutions have a lot of power because they are allowed to create money. To understand this better, suppose that I take some students from here, say you are a top student here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the power to create money. And how I do that is I say that you can issue anybody IOU. You say that I owe you $1,000, and you take that paper, and on this there's a guarantee. I have that guarantee. The government gives you a guarantee that if he can't pay, I will pay. So now his IOU is just as good as state money, as backed by government authority. This is exactly what the banks do today. This is exactly the role of banks. They create money by the authority of the government. And this gives them a huge amount of power. They can do something which nobody else can do. And so this power has to be kept hidden from the public for many reasons. So the bigger picture that results from this is that the theories which are taught in universities are not taught because they are true. They are taught because they protect the powerful. So the universities are designed to create knowledge which protects the power structures of that society. So once you understand money correctly, then you understand that creation of money creates power. And then how that money is used is a moral question, whether it's used justly or unjustly. So both power and morality and justice, they come in immediately once you study the issues of money creation and the use of the money which is created. So in modern economies, most of the money is created by private banks. But this creation is enabled by the government. The government provides backup and guarantee, which allows banks to create money. If that backup was not there, then the banking system would be highly unstable. So this means that the creation of money is a public trust because it is enabled by the government. But routinely, banks abuse this trust. They create money in the name of the public, but they use it for private profits. So what happens is that the bank deposits are guaranteed by the government. Suppose that the bank takes the money of the depositors and it indulges in a huge gamble. It puts in a bet which is going to double the money. And suppose they win. If they win the bet, they can take all the gains because they're not guaranteed, they're not going to give, they only have a fixed amount of interest to pay. So they pay 10%, but the remaining 90% belongs to them because they gambled and they won. So they are using public funds for private gambling and capturing the gains. But what happens if they lose? If they lose, then the government comes in and bails them out because the money belongs to the depositors. So this is called a well-known phenomena, privatizing the gains and socializing the losses. So when the banks lose, the public pays for that loss. If the banks gain, they gain all the profit. And this is the critical problem in modern economies. And this is in Pakistan, for example, and this is true. Well, Pakistan is exceptional because in Pakistan, the banks are the main business of banks is to lend money to the government. So this is a very strange situation that the money that the banks create is actually created by government power and authority. But then they use this money and they sell, they rent it, they loan it to the government, which has allowed the creation at very high rates of interest. Basically, today about half the budget of Pakistan is spent on interest payments to private banks. This kind of privatizing gains and socializing losses is what led to the Great Depression. This is what led to the global financial crisis. There is a IMF paper which says that since the 1970s, there have been about 300 monetary crises around the world. And so you are having all these crises. Why? Because of this wrong monetary system where money is created for in the public interest but used for private benefits. The one of the things which is not mentioned at all in economics textbooks is injustice. And the greatest example of the injustice is what happened in the global financial crisis, where millions of people lost their entire life savings because they had put the savings into the house they had purchased, and when that house was foreclosed, all the money they had put into the house was gone and their assets were seized. So trillions of dollars of household wealth was destroyed. At the same time, trillions of dollars of bank wealth was also destroyed, but the government gave trillions of dollars back to the banks and did not take care of the house. So this was hugely unjust because the banks had caused the crisis and yet they were the ones who were compensated. So it is like this, that if if somebody stabs somebody with a knife, then you apply the medicine to the knife and not to the person who is dying. So So this was hugely unjust, but nobody mentions justice in connection with the global finance. There are after the global financial crisis, lots of people thought about how we can prevent this. And so there's a whole field called macro-prudential regulation about what are the rules we need to prevent the crisis. But nobody talks about the huge injustice that was done and how we can prevent injustice in the future. So this is one of the critical goals of an Islamic economy, to prevent injustice. So I'm coming to the end here. So there is in Islam, we have a triangular architecture. There's the judiciary, which is actually, there's the ulama who determine the application of the Sharia. There is the executive branch, which is the police, the Khilafah, and then there's the judiciary, which makes the decisions. So there's the interpretation of law, the implementation of law, and the execution. And these are the three pillars that are needed for balance. So after the global financial crisis, many people recognize that this is a problem and how to solve it. So there are three approaches I've mentioned, many other people have taken. One is the sovereign money approach. They said that the problem arises because of private creation of money by banks, so don't allow it. Let the government create all the money. So that's sovereign money. In modern monetary theory, it says that no, you should allow the private banks to create money, but you should regulate it more effectively. There are and you should use money in a better way to serve the public. So these are the modern monetary theory proposals. There's macroprudential regulation, which is a mix of these, which basically attempts to put enough rules on banks to prevent such crises. But none of these is an effective approach, because none of them take justice into account, and they don't take public welfare and social interest into account. So my proposal is to say that we need three pillars. One is the government, one is an Islamic bank, but this time it's not the Islamic banks as they currently are, but rather a different kind of Islamic bank, which I will mention. And then there's the central bank, but the central bank again will be concerned primarily with implementing justice in monetary transactions. So with this kind of structure, we might be able to implement a monetary system which will create justice. So the government makes the framework, the laws, and the regulations. The critical change between the Islamic banks that I would consider as genuine, as opposed to capitalist, is that the Islamic banks should serve the public interest. They should not be the commercial capitalist bank is out to make profits for its shareholders. The Islamic bank should be out to provide social service, maximum service to the public. That should be the meaning of the word Islamic. So Islamic banks should be oriented towards the community, and they should serve the public interest, in addition to what I call micro justice. Micro justice is contract based, and that is what we currently try to do. That look at a particular contract between the bank and the borrower, and make sure that that contract is just, at least by just I mean subject to the Sharia. Yani. So micro justice does not ensure macro justice. Even if every single contract is Sharia compliant, the whole system may be highly unjust. So in the central bank, there is always a monetary policy committee which determines monetary policy. This monetary policy committee should have representatives of the private sector who look after the public interest. It should have representatives as the ulama and Sharia, as well as monetary experts. These are not currently part. And there are certain rules we can implement about justice which will which are not currently taken into account, which would help in terms of creating justice. There are more concrete details about how to do this. This is only a big picture. There are some very specific ideas which we can use. But since we are out of time, I will not discuss this. There are 3 papers of mine referenced here on this page, which provide some of the details. And that's it. So that's the end of the presentation.
Will it be okay for you, Professor? Thank you so much for the excellent presentation to receive some Q&A.
Question and answer session.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would be very happy.
Questions from the audience? Yes, we have a gentleman over there, right over there.
Yes.
Prof, thank you very much for the presentation. It's very interesting, but I have a quick question about the money creation process and bank failures. If the banks can actually just create money out of thin air just by writing in your accounts that we're giving this amount, how then do I explain the occurrence of bank failures?
Oh. Bank creation of money is subject to rules. Basically, if the banks follow certain procedures and rules, then the government is bound to, if the loan is not returned, the government is bound to reimburse the banks. But if the banks do not follow the rules, the government is not responsible for supporting them. And so if the banks follow the rules for money creation, then they will not fail. But the banks are free to not follow those rules, and they don't, because they can make much more money by doing some more shady transactions. And that is what happened in the global financial crisis, when the banks went far beyond what they were allowed to do. And so that was one of the reasons for the bank failure. Okay? Yes. Walaikum assalam.
I have a quotation from a paper. I just wanted your opinion. This is the first question. This is a paper from Prof. Mira from Malaysia.
Yes.
That
is in the next seminar at Istanbul, Sabahuddin Zaim. I'm going talking about the gold dinar.
When is it?
That's 2 o'clock today. Yes, go ahead.
There actually.
Yes.
Anyway, in this paper, can I read?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This paragraph is seigniorage of fiat money riba. Having discussed the effects of fractional reserve banking, can the seigniorage of fiat money be considered as riba? We assert that it is. If a bank lends out $1,000 at 10%, borrower must pay 1,100 at the end of the year, and this additional 100 is considered riba. Now, if the original principal amount of 1,000 is created out of nothing, as in fractional reserve banking and issuance of new currency notes and coins, it gives free purchasing power that is 10 times the interest charge, is assumed immediately, unlike the interest money that is received only a year later. This free purchasing power that is many times more than the interest itself and acquired without assuming any legitimate risk is indeed riba. Now he's asking whether ulama should issue a fatwa on it to call it riba.
Yeah.
So my question is, what is your opinion on it? This is one. Second one is the concrete details you mentioned. Now from this joint system or like both banking system, how to transition from this three triangular government structure?
Okay. As far as the first one is concerned, there are many people who have made this argument. I think this is a wrong argument. Fractional reserve is not riba. It may be haram for many other reasons, but riba is a very specific transaction. It is a loan of a money in which you get more back, and this is very well defined. And to say that fractional reserve is riba is just a confusion. It may be wrong, but it doesn't satisfy the conditions. Who is the party to whom the loan was given, and which is the party which is giving excess in loan? When it is not, it's just yani empty words to call it riba. I can call that if somebody is fat, that is riba because he is taking more food than he is allowed to. So it's a good argument, but it has no shari basis. So as far as the concrete details, is that what you asked about? No.
How to transition?
Oh, how to transition? Yes. Yeah. On these, I have mentioned that this is one of the great weaknesses of both modern economics and of the Islamic reform efforts. We don't have a good theory of social change. The theory of social change is that you have a big dream, system that is ideal and perfect and very, very far away from existing reality. But you don't get there in one step. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So you just take one step in the direction of that ideal. So now what that one step can be, that requires pragmatic, very clear thinking about where we are. So for example, we want to go for Hajj. This is well known. The goal is the same. But if you are in Rome, then your first step will be very different from if you are in Singapore. And so what that first step will be depends very strongly on where you stand exactly. So I have given some suggestions on what that first step can be in the Islamic countries of the world, as well as around the globe, because we are not confined to think about the nation state as the beginning of our efforts. But to give a very simple example, we can, I think that one very important first step would be to say that Islamic banks should serve public interest, and therefore let us start by creating a dual bottom line. They already are required by the government, by national banks, to prepare a statement in which they list all of the financial transactions, and they do a costs and basically assets. They should at the same time also list what they are doing, the costs and benefits in terms of social welfare. And this should be the requirement imposed upon them by the Sharia boards, that let's look at what you're doing which is beneficial of the public. So this would be a good place to start, a first step, that if you want to have the word Islamic in your name, then you must provide an accounting of social benefits that you're providing, or also any social harms that are being caused by you. So that would be a good place to start.
Well, thank you very much, Professor, for this wonderful presentation. You have made mention about three proposals where how this, Islamic finances can be promoted. But how do you think this can be integrated in diverse countries like Nigeria,
where some Islamic finances, such as sukuk bonds, are being seen as a religious, economic religious, domination, and so on and so forth.
I don't understand.
I mean, how can these three proposals you have made mention can be integrated in some countries that have diverse religious, ethical and religious moral grounds?
You see, as I said, the first step will depend on where you are. So the first step in Nigeria may be very different from the first step in Pakistan. It all depends on the local circumstances. For example, the power of the ulama in Pakistan is very different from their role and status in Malaysia and also in Turkey. So the first step you can take in Turkey towards Islamic banking, genuine Islamic banking, will be different from what you can do in Pakistan, and it will be different from what you can do in Pakistan. So it's very pragmatic. It's what can be done within the political constraints and the power configurations that exist today. What is possible to do now? So that's so I can't answer your question about Nigeria because I don't know enough about Nigerian politics to understand what are the constraints and what is feasible.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. Actually, I think others have asked the same question I wanted to. First of all, I thank you for this wonderful lecture and also the approach you've taken. You're one of the few. So basically, my question was, if, as we know, politics, economics cannot be separated from politics. So maybe scholars who have the idea that we should consider the current system and try to make some reform because the whole issue is about injustice. So it's not like we're introducing Islamic economics because it's from the West or because from East. It's because we want to introduce a system that's built upon justice. So considering the current global system we are found in, like we've been colonized by a system. So how can we, what are some of the approaches can we take at least to do based on our level? So are there any, like, even from a micro level, steps that we can take little by little, maybe till we get a dream of having a khilafah that will come and change the whole system and build a new one?
Yes, well, for a long time, I think that my own thinking also and many others has been focused on the nation state, how we can get the governments to act more Islamically or be more Islamic. But for many reasons, it seems this is the wrong level. And for a while now, I have been thinking that for Islam, our microeconomics should be at the level of the community, not the individual. So we should think about the mahalla, the masjid community, and think about implementing Islam in that neighborhood of 40 houses and making sure that no one is hungry and making sure that all the children are educated within the mahalla to the extent possible within the prevailing environment. So if the government is supportive, that's very good. If not, so anyway, that's the micro. And the macro level should not be the nation. It should be the ummah as a whole. So there are many things, many initiatives which can be done at the level of the ummah. And the theory at the level, economic theory at the level of ummah will be very different from economic theory for the nation state. So economic theory for the nation state will look at what is good for Pakistan and what is good for Iran and what is good for Turkey separately, and will not evaluate the collective efforts. But from the Ummah perspective, if we look at an economic policy which benefits Pakistan but harms Turkey, then for us this will not be a good policy. We will not say this is good for Pakistan and bad for Turkey. We'll say it's bad for the Ummah as a whole. So when we start, this kind of analysis has not been done. So I think that the easiest easiest place to start action is the community level. And then if you want to be more ambitious, there are many options available at the level of the Ummah, which I have mentioned in some of these papers. And there are many other innovative actions we can do using Islamic banks and communities and whatever support is available at higher levels. But it's all very local, and it depends on what you can do at Ibn Khaldun is different from what you can do at International Islamic University of Islamabad. So this is how Islam is, in that everybody takes actions. See, I think one of the biggest obstacles to reform has been thinking at the wrong level. So a lot of groups are saying that, okay, once we get the government, then we will be able to do X, Y, and Z, and a lot of wonderful things will happen. But how do we get from here to there, and what we can do where we can see success within 1 month or within 1 year, short-term local goals which can be achieved, and which will be the first step towards the larger plan. Those are the things where we are lacking, we are missing. I mean, idealists and visionaries we do have, but if you have a 1,000-year plan, what is the first year? What is required to do in 1 year? That we don't have, the local concrete. And that is also going to be very different from individual to individual, from location to location, from place to place. So I think Islamic reform occurs by everybody becoming an engine of change, rather than waiting for something to happen from the angels to come with the from Imam Mahdi to come with the plan for change. Yes.
Joe, thank you very much for your presentation. I was going to ask about your suggestion about the monetary policy.
Yes.
What's the difference between what you suggested and the Friedman's idea? As you
Oh.
know, Friedman says he also supports the full reserve banking system, and as a monetary policy rule, he says increase the amount of money in the economy, which is equal to the growth rate of the economy.
Yeah. There are many differences between, Friedman is also almost the opposite of what I would be proposing. See, Friedman doesn't look at the politics and the power of money creation. And so, in fact, what he says is not even true, in the sense that if it is roughly true that if we create money and in the amount which is equal to the growth rate, and this money is given to those who need it for production, then we will get the best results. But in the current system, money can be created in the right amounts, but it will not go to the people who need it to produce the economy, because the politics and power is such that the money will go to the non-deserving parties, and the people who need it to do the production will not get it. So the power, how the money is distributed, these are issues which are not addressed by Friedman.
No, you ignore the demand side of the economy. For example, couldn't I go to the bank?
Ah, yes. Yeah, that's if in an ideal neoclassical economy, if a man is a producer and he has a farm, then he can get the money he needs. He can borrow the money and produce and then repay. This is an ideal frictionless economy. But the fact is that the signals are not present, the information required for credibility. So the farmer will get a loan at a interest rate that is too high, and then his land will be seized because he will not be able to make the payments. And so the power will end up in the hands of the bankers and not with the farmers. So the ideal theory, what it says, is very different from the ground realities, because of the power that is given to the people who create money.
No, in the model you suggested, let's
Yeah.
say we are in equilibrium.
Yeah.
I mean, the banks can only give loan, which is equal to their capital, isn't it? Nothing more. This is 100% reserve system.
Oh, 100% reserve. I don't approve. I don't think that 100% reserve is a workable system. But go ahead. So,
If it's not the case, then the question changes.
okay, okay. No, I don't.
I was going to ask about the creation of the money.
Yeah,
If there's a 100%
yeah,
reserve system, then
yeah.
central bank must be creating the money.
Yes, yes.
According to which criteria and when central bank is going to create the money?
Yeah. So I don't like that, Yani. I don't agree with the 100% reserve proposal. That's one my first proposal. I say why it will not work and what the alternative is. And so basically, I think the money creation should be done by a monetary policy committee, which has representatives of the public and the ulama and economic experts as well. And it should money creation should be evaluated in terms of what public benefit it will bring.
There must be some institutional structure.
Yes, yes, institution is necessary.
From where it's going to get the demand for money, then according to which criteria?
Oh, yeah. Demand for money will be created by, you see, if you want to look at concrete possibilities, you can have communities or collections of communities, and they have projects that they bring which require money, and they submit these projects to their banks, and the banks aggregate these and forward this to the committee that this is the demand for money. The banks should have the job of evaluating these proposals, that if this is a dream or if this is a realistic, feasible, concrete proposal. So if there is a good proposal which makes use of resources and will create production, but you see, the bank should not be looking at maximizing profits. They should be looking at maximizing social benefits. So if you have a proposal for a hospital or a school which will bring long-term social benefit but will not bring a lot of profit, they should forward that this is what we need. This is the money we need to build a school, and the bank should be responsible for checking that this is a good proposal. It will bring social benefits, and then they can. So that's how the demands will be collected over the economy. And then the demand for money goes up to the monetary policy committee. Huh?
If the demand is higher,
Yeah.
then the production.
Then there can be inflation. If basically the inflation, it depends on the resource constraint in the economy. If there is enough resources to take care of all the demands, then we should fulfill all of them. But if everybody is asking for schools, but there's only a fixed amount of concrete which can be used for building, then you have to budget and ration and take.
Avoid inflation then.
No, you can. I said that if you won't fulfill all the demands if there is a resource constraint, then you.
No, in terms of money creation.
Oh, yeah.
Demand is higher.
Yeah.
Than the economic capacity. So automatically that committee is providing the money.
No, not automatically. They will prioritize. So you look at the resource constraint within the economy. So you have 10 demands for school, but only concrete enough to build 5 of them. So you pick the maximum 5 and you don't satisfy the demand of the other 5.
So I'm going to get the car. Ayman Hoca couldn't get the car there.
Yes, it's possible. It's possible, yes. We look at which one will bring more public benefit, not private benefit.
But you are giving a very big power to that committee.
Well, it's a very long ways off. Yes, yes. So that's why the committee will not, you see, you will have many subcommittees at the community levels. They will evaluate welfare, and then all of these will get lumped into aggregate demand, which gets passed up. So at different levels, different kinds of things will be happening.
They're going to the central planning, I think.
Oh, but then you see, we will have an Islamic economy, and he will say, oh, this man is happy. I will gift you the car. And I will sacrifice for the sake of Allah to make my brother happy. Because the suffering of my brother is harder for me than my own loss. So you feel the pain of the body. Every part feels the pain.